In today's video, we're looking at Rover, the British brand that revolutionised bicycles across the world before becoming a major car manufacturer. It kick-started the Land Rover brand after World War II, before getting caught up in turbulent times under British Leyland control, and finally being under BMW control before 6 years of independence before its bankruptcy of 2005. The Rover company started in 1878 as a bicycle company. 1885 saw the launch of the Rover safety bike. The Rover safety bike was the first of its kind. It had two similar sized wheels with pedals that propelled the rear wheel, as opposed to the unsafe penny farthing style bikes that were used in the early 1880s. In 1888, Rover built an electric car, however this never made it to production. In 1899, John Starley, the founder of Rover, started importing and developing Persian motorbikes. However, John Starley died in 1901, aged 46, and the company is taken over by entrepreneur H.J. Lawson. In 1904, Rover launches its first production car, the Rover 8. It uses a single-cylinder 1.3 litre engine. In 1907, a Rover 8 drove from Coventry to Istanbul. It was the first ever car to cross over Europe. In total, roughly 2,200 Rover 8s were built. In 1911, Rover launches the 12. It was designed by Owen Clegg. It was so popular that Rover stopped developing other cars and plans to become a one-car manufacturer. In total, roughly 5,000 were built before World War I. Production starts again after the war. In total, another 13,000 are built by 1924. In 1924, Rover launches the 9, a compact car that uses a 1.1 litre four-cylinder engine that developed 20 horsepower. Roughly 13,000 of these were built. A development of this, named the Rover 10, was sold up until 1947, over 3 generations, of which 27,000 were built. In 1925, Rover stops building bikes due to slow demand. Rover struggled financially from the mid-1920s to the mid-1930s. During World War II, Rover factories were paid by the government to produce aeroplane engines and airframes. Rover's main factory in Coventry was bombed in 1940. This factory never regained full production. In 1940, Rover was approached by Frank Whittle to carry out work for his company, Power Jets. By 1943, Rover had secretly developed its own version of the jet engine, which it thought was superior, but poor relations between Rover and Frank Whittle led to Rover handing its part in the project over to Rolls-Royce, in exchange for Rolls-Royce's tank engine factory in Nottingham, which Rover kept building cars in until 1964. In 1945, Rover hires engineers from Rolls-Royce to help it develop jet engines as it wanted to build jet-powered cars. It built 5 prototypes. The jet turbines could run at up to 55,000 RPM and provide up to 100 horsepower. During tests in Belgium, these models hit over 150 miles an hour. They could run on petrol, paraffin or diesel, but were considered too heavy on fuel for production. In 1948, Rover started building its first Land Rover, based on their 1947 design that had been inspired by the Jeeps from World War II. Originally, they were all painted light green due to surplus of military plane paint. It was the first civilian 4x4 with a roof and doors, and featured an aluminium body that was resistant to rust. In 1951, Rover receives Royal Warrant for the Land Rover, and despite the Land Rover being used as a quick cash flow option to help Rover begin building cars again, it proved to be their most popular model for many years. Between 1948 and 1949, Rover sold the P3 series. It consisted of the Rover 60 and Rover 75. These were executive cars, of which 9,000 were built over a 1-year period. These were replaced by the P4 series, which was led by the Mark II Rover 75. Over 130,000 P4 series were built by 1964. In 1956, Land Rover builds the world's first production, 4-wheel drive, 5-door utility vehicle. In 1958, Rover launches the P5, their flagship luxury saloon. These were used by Margaret Thatcher and the Queen. Nearly 70,000 of these were built. This was the first ever Rover to use a monocoque chassis and came available with a 3.5 litre V8. 1963 saw the launch of the Rover P6. It was designed to replace the P4 and P5 models. It used a 2 litre 4-cylinder engine that would appeal to more people than the Rover P5. It was inspired by the Citroën TS. It used a unibody build and 4-wheel disc brakes. It won the first ever European Car of the Year title in 1964. They went on to sell 320,000 of these. Leyland Motors Limited, who built lorries and buses, acquired Rover in 1967, its second car manufacturer purchase after buying Triumph in 1960. 1968 saw Leyland Motors merge with British Motor Holdings Limited to form the British Leyland Motor Corporation. This grouped Rover with Jaguar, MG, Austin and Mini. In 1970, under Leyland control, Rover releases the Range Rover, an upmarket alternative to the Land Rover series models with better road manners. It was only available with Rover's V8 until the diesel option in 1988. It was also 3-door only until the 5-door came in 1981. It was also Rover's most successful and profitable model of the time. It was produced until 1996. 1975 sees the collapse of the British Leyland Motor Corporation. It is nationalised to become British Leyland. In 1976, Rover launches the SD1. Rover had been put into Leyland's special division with Jaguar and Triumph. The Rover SD1 was their first product. In 1977, it won the European Car of the Year title. Unfortunately, it was plagued by British Leyland's poor build quality. Its reputation was tarnished, but still it sold 300,000 in 10 years. In 1984, following years of no new models for Rover, during British Leyland turmoil, Rover brings out the 200, but it's just a rebadged Triumph Acclaim, itself just a Honda Acclaim, meaning the Rover 200 was already 4 years old at its launch. The Acclaim was Triumph's final car. Turning it into a Rover brought an end to the Triumph brand. In 1986, Rover launches the 800. Honda was in need of a flagship, and Rover's SD1 was 10 years old. It was co-developed with the Honda Legend. The Rover 800 was one of the most popular large cars in the UK at the time. In total, roughly 200,000 of these were built. In 1986, British Leyland is rebranded the Rover Group. It's reprivatised and sold to British Aerospace in 1988 for £150 million. Rover was seen by British Leyland to be the strongest in the newfound group, despite Land Rover and Mini being more popular and having higher profit margins. In 1988, British Aerospace drops the Austin brand but continues to sell its cars through Rover dealerships. These cars are the Mini, the Metro, the Maestro and the Montego. They don't wear any badges. The Maestro and Montego were phased out, unbranded in the 1990s. The Mini stayed independent until 2000. Some Japanese exports were Rover Minis, and people often refer to post-1988 Minis as Rover Minis, but they never officially were, even though some UK V5 documents incorrectly label Rover as the manufacturer name. In 1990, the unbranded Metro took the Rover name during the car's third facelift. The Metro was facelifted again in 1994 and was renamed the Rover 100. It came to an end in 1998. At 18 years old, it had fallen far behind competition such as the Fiesta, Clio and Peugeot 206. The Metro was launched to replace the Mini, but was actually outlived by the Mini by over 2 years. 1989 saw the launch of the second generation Rover 200. It was the first car launched as the reprivatised Rover Group. At the top of the range sat the 220 Turbo. It was Rover's most powerful and fastest production car. With 200 horsepower, it could hit 150 miles an hour and hit 60 in 6.2 seconds. Over 700,000 were built, making it Rover's most built car ever by a big margin. In 1994, BMW buys out the Rover Group for £800 million. It was a controversial move, as many British brands were now under German control. This happened only 6 years after the Rover Group was reprivatised. In 1998, Rover releases its first all-new model under BMW control, the 75. A large family car available as a saloon or estate. Initially a front-wheel drive model, but at great expense to Rover was offered with rear-wheel drive when fitted with a 4.6 litre Ford Mustang V8. From 2001, a rebadged version, branded the MGZT, was sold alongside the Rover 75. Rover developed the 75 with little interference from BMW. Rover K-Series engines from 1.8 to 2.5 litres in size were used, as well as a 2 litre turbo diesel from BMW. The Rover 75 won multiple international awards. Rebadged versions called the MG7 and Roe 750 were built in China between 2006 and 2016. In the year 2000, BMW sells Rover and MG for just £10, after failing to turn a profit on the two brands. In the months prior to becoming an independent company, Rover had released the 25, a hatchback between the size of a Super Mini and a small family car. It's a dated model though, having been sold as the Rover 200 since 1995, itself sharing many structural parts with the Rover 200 from 1989. It's a similar story with the Rover 45, simply being a rebadged Rover 400, with roots tracing back to the Honda Domini from 1992. It's also sold as the MG ZS from 2001, and then used in China as the MG5 concept of 2009. In 2003, Rover launched its final ever car, the City Rover, a rebadged Tata Indica that had been built in India since 1998, a hugely criticised model that was rumoured to cost Tata £2,000 per car to build. The plan had been that once shipped to Europe, Rover would market them for less than £5,000. They got greedy and priced it from £6,500 to £9,000 per car, putting it directly up against the Fiat Panda, a model that was far more efficient on fuel, more spacious, of higher quality, better to drive and more comfortable, and of more modern design. The City Rover simply wasn't competitive in the UK, Rover's home market, and was a sales flop. This, and the MG X-Power that also appeared in 2003, caused significant financial loss to already financially stricken MG Rover, and in 2005 the company went bankrupt.